Right now, we're joined by wealth coach Rebecca Pritchard in Melbourne, and also Gemma Dale's with us. She heads up investor behaviour at the NAB with us in Sydney to talk about how people might be cashing in on those budget sweeteners. Rebecca, first to you, what stands out?
Thanks for having me back, team. You know, I think those offsets for pretty much the vast majority of Australians is exciting. Last year, a lot of people were left disappointed with that net impact for about $10 in your wallet each week. But we're talking between $20 and $40 a week now for singles and potentially for couples, which is a sizable difference when you consider the growing cost of living. You know, particularly this time of year, a lot of people have just had a hike on their health insurance. That money goes a long way.
Yeah, Gemma Dale, just over to you now. We heard from Leo Shanahan a little earlier, and he described what they were doing in superannuation as just sort of tinkering around the edges. Do you see it that way, or do you think that what we've read here in the budget is significant?
It is very quiet on the superannuation front this year. So we've had many big years for superannuation. It's not a bad thing. People get really anxious about tinkering with super.
Yes.
And it's the frustration I hear most frequently from investors. It's like, please, could they just leave it alone till I get my head around it?
It's supposed to be long-term settings, and they just get fiddled with all the time.
Yeah, it changes a lot. So this year it's simply allowing older Australians, so those 66 and 67 from next year, so not immediately, to make contributions to their super without having to meet the work test, which makes a bit of sense. It's intended to align the age at which you can keep contributing to your super without still working with the pension age, which will be increasing to age 67, as we know, although that's a bit later. Okay. So it's giving people an opportunity to contribute for a little bit longer. Apart from that, not a lot happens.
Okay.
So do you pile that in with tax changes and tax cuts, because they're going to be getting taxed at a lower rate? You know, does that just sort of add into the overall tax centrepiece?
It does. I mean, superannuation is very attractively taxed compared to everything else. So long as you're under your $1.6 million cap, you have a tax rate of 0 when you are retired. That's pretty nice. It's hard to compete with. Zero's about the best you're going to get. So for those who are nearing retirement, it's incredibly attractive. The biggest challenge for a lot of people is getting the money in. So long as you are under that cap, and if you're in that 67, 66 sort of age bracket, you can make contributions if this measure gets through. Very important point to make. $25,000 pre-tax, which is always lovely, so you can claim a deduction for that. That fits into the tax category. $100,000 post-tax, and they'll allow you to use the bring forward in those years as well, which is doing 3 years worth of contributions in 1 year. So all of those contributions that you make are then in the superannuation environment and taxed far more generously than they would be in your own name.
Rebecca Pritchard, you like to coach millennials in particular in your line of work. I know you do all sorts of money coaching, but for people, I mean, this is the point where people start to make calls. Now, what was in it for me, and what should I be doing now? What's your main advice to people? You know, if the government gets in and this is all legit, this is how it's all going to work out. What's one of your main takeaways you think for people that you speak with?
Well, first of all, I have to say on the superannuation front, not that we were expecting it, there was no leaks on this front, but I would have loved to see some changes to the contribution cap. As Gemma mentioned, it's only $25,000. So for a lot of millennials and Gen Xers, that's really not a lot of money if you perhaps have neglected your superannuation till later in life. So I'd love to see that perhaps pop up in future years. But I think for me, the big takeaway isn't so much that $20 to $40 each week, but it's actually the investment in healthcare. Because we talk about all the time, for most Australians, their number one asset is actually their ability to work. And if you can't work, whether it's physically or mentally, something has broken down, that really has a humongous impact on your finances both now and into the future if you compound that over time. So I think for me, the key takeaways are actually the investment in the healthcare system, whether it's on more affordable x-rays and ultrasounds, or the investment specifically in mental health, because if that can then improve the ability for millennials or for anyone to invest in their own health, that means they're more likely to earn an income, they're more likely to stay in the workforce and more likely to become financially free over time.
Rebecca, while we've got you, a little earlier in the evening, you and I were talking about tax and what people can do to improve their tax situation. I thought one of the particularly interesting things that the government's planning on doing is pumping $1 billion into the ATO with a view to get 3.6 back. It says that it's cracking down on dodgy accountants, tax advisors, things like that. Do you think that this is something that Australians need to be aware of, that they make sure, that the people that they're getting advice from are legitimate? I mean, is this a considerable problem on the ground, do you think?
Look, I'd like to say it's not a considerable problem, but in like so many areas, it pays to do your research, and you know, the financial advice has had a huge overhaul. We've gone through the ringer in terms of quality advice. So I think it's only fair that the accountants get shaken up as well, because I have no doubt that there's some people out there who are doing dodgy or less than admirable behaviour. So if the government are investing in the ATO to give them these powers to do a better job of that, ultimately I think that's a fantastic thing for the community. I also mentioned earlier tonight that I'm a big fan of the ATO app. So if the government again are continuing to invest in things like that, I think that's a win for everyone.
Hey, thank you so much, Rebecca Pritchard, Wealth Enhancers, and from the NAB, Gemma Dale. Thank you for checking in with us tonight.